from Astoria, Queens, and I moved there in '77, which was a pretty pivotal year, from Silver Spring, Maryland, not far from where bands like Minor Threat and Bad Brains and other folks were making important music. And I went outside with a football back when your mother would tell you it's okay to play outside, and everyone had a magic marker, and everyone was spinning on their heads or breakdancing or doing something, and I was like, well, what is this? And this became a big part of my life and a lot of things that I do today. I also want to point out that I recently ran into super producer Marley Marl, and he told me the very first record he ever produced was in my building. So to me, that says a lot about something greater than me that has put me in a position to do a lot of things that I've had the opportunity to do. And because I was doing certain things, like in '93, I was publishing a hip-hop newspaper called Beatdown, which kind of came out of the shadows of me publishing a graffiti zine in 1988 at a time when there weren't many graffiti zines at the time. Through publishing Beatdown newspaper, which was a hip-hop newspaper, I came in touch with this young man who at the time was at Def Jam doing a wider, was it Def Jam or Rush Management? Where did I run into you?
Def Jam.
He was at Def Jam, and he had like a cubicle stuffed with posters and free stuff. And, you know, I had a little newspaper, and I was trying to get on, and I was trying to get posters and free stuff. And, you know, maybe he gave me a poster, I don't remember, but I was trying to hit him up for ads, and he was like, yeah, whatever. And then I was like, well, what are you into? Because if he didn't have money for me, and if he didn't have posters for me, right? Well, what else can I get from him? So I was like, so what are you into? And he was really into basketball, which is a passion that has continued on to this point, leading up to this wonderful shirt that speaks to this wonderful film that he's recently completed, which I'm sure he can talk about. But I asked him, so what are you into? And he said basketball. I was like, yo, will you write about that? He's like, yo, are you paying me? I'm like, nah, son, I don't know. Right? So he wrote for my little hip hop newspaper, and you know, at the time he was doing this wonderful radio show, I believe, with this gentleman who I had known from downtown, various parties. You know, my friend Bill Spector, who I know from the punk rock scene in New York City, wound up producing a lot of hip hop parties, and I would go to these parties, and I was dating a young lady who worked in the industry at the time, and we were all mutual friends, and this guy was DJ Adrian B at the point. Long time ago, I'm outing him. But the point I'm trying to make is, you know, only in New York City would you have a nice Puerto Rican gentleman like this gentleman and a nice, upstanding Caucasian individual like this before the internet coming together on behalf of like music and like having a good time and being a part of the community. And that community transcended not only New York City, but people, these tapes that, you know, they weren't tapes, they were radio shows. Now these things exist as tapes, as historical documents with some of the most important artists of our generation. You know, I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter, and yeah, she tells me about Drake and whoever and whatever, but she loves Wu-Tang, and she loves Big, you know, she's like discovered Big L, and you know, all of these really important artists are still relevant and important today. And these two gentlemen with their radio show, which humbly started at Columbia, where I believe this gentleman was attending for a brief period of time and somehow hustled to continue to hold on to the show, and various hustles and put various people on to keep it going. But through this humble sort of experiment of these two guys having friends in common, and the best friend in common being hip hop, coming together and doing something that wasn't done at the time. You know, I was a fan of Marley Marl, of course, and Red Alert, and you know, growing up in New York, it was a big deal to hear this song for the first time on the radio. You heard the Slick Rick song or Video Music Box. It was like when Everlast came out, you know, he had a video, and I remember when he first came out, it was like a Friday, and then Monday it was like, yo, did you hear that white boy who sounded like Rakim? It was like a big deal, you know, and what these guys created had that same, it had what Marley and all these other guys had, but there was something about it that was more approachable because you knew the guys. Like, you know, I'm a little bit younger and I grew up with some of these rappers, but like the guys who were coming to their show were like guys I kind of knew. And there was something very approachable about the relationship that these two guys had, and there was something very natural about the way the artists would come on the show and perform. And there was, to me, recording music is really about capturing a great performance. You know, today you have Pro Tools, you have all these things. Like back then, it's really about capturing the passion of the performance. And I feel like the environment that these guys created on their show created something where people felt really comfortable and felt like they can do what they wanted in a climate that made them feel like there was nothing that could stop them. And I'm gonna start crying now, but what I wanna know, because we're gonna wind up in 93, because that's the whole thing. Let's talk about how you guys first connected.
Thank you, good night. Well, where's Faith Newman?
Right here.
Faith, I was just telling Faith, Faith was Def Jam A&R at the time that Bobbito was doing promotions at Def Jam.
I did A&R under Faith as well.
I stand corrected. Yes, that's right.
You do the demos too.
Yep.
And I was, you know, back, that was 90. In 90, Def Jam was still like, was still the shit. And I was a DJ that was buying, you know, I was buying my records. You know, I was in the record stores probably like 6 hours a day at that time. And I met a young man who was working at Def Jam, and we sort of worked out this arrangement where if I gave him drink tickets at the clubs I was at, he'd give me Def Jam promos. So he said, "Come on down." I went to Def Jam, and on the way down,
what year is this?
This is 90.
Okay.
On the way down, I bumped into a friend of mine.
The summer of 1990, to be exact.
Who explained, she was very excited that I was going to Def Jam because she had a huge crush on Robert Garcia.
Wow.
So, hi, Bobby. So I get to Def Jam. This is when it's down on Broadway, and you know, you're thinking that Def Jam, which is, you know, the powerhouse hip hop label, would have, you know, a million people running about. I get there, there's no receptionist, the door is open, there's nobody there, it's empty, empty. I stick my head into this conference room, and I see this guy stuffing records into envelopes, and I said, "Yo, you know where Bobbito Garcia is?" And he said, "Yo, that's me." And to the best of my recollection, from that moment on, we hung out like constantly. We immediately hit it off. I remember walking around. We took a walk, had lunch, and I think the next day we hung out. And it was I think that week that I said, "Yo, Bob, we should try to do some kind of radio show and try to syndicate it or something." We just felt like we had a passion and a vision that we thought would be, you know, that we could share with you know, people that were like-minded. This is before I even knew that KCR was an option. It just happened to be that I was at Columbia, and through a lot of things sort of miraculously aligning themselves, we ended up on the radio. And I mean, there's plenty of reasons why that shouldn't have happened, but it did.
Would you say the Illuminati got you on there?
I don't know if I'm down with the Illuminati or not. To this day, I can't tell. I don't know.
So the stars aligned. So how do you remember it, Mr. Garcia's heart
The
rock?
same way. I mean, I met him at Def Jam. Well, actually, no. Prior to that, I had already seen him DJ at a spot called Mars that was on 13th and 10th Avenue in the basement. And I actually remember the first record that I heard him spin as I walked through the staircase past the doorway. It was Ultramagnetic. And then he played G-Rap after that. And I was like, didn't know who he was, you know, was going to clubs. And, but instantly, like, took note, like, I like him. And so when I met him at Def Jam, I knew I knew him as a DJ that I was enjoying his tune.
You chose him.
And then yeah, and then we started doing a radio show.
So tell us how you navigated that, because you were an actual student. I
was.
So
yeah.
how did you invite your Puerto Rican friend in?
Well, I have friends who are Puerto Rican. Let's see. We got the show, and then I said, "Wait a minute. All right, I DJ, but I don't talk. Like I don't want to be the white guy on the radio in New York City." So I was like, "Bob, you handle the talking duties." You and actually it was Curious George as well. It was the three of us, and they did the talking, I did the music, and once the show started, really kind of going somewhere, we had an artist by the name of Master Flex and 9MM come up, and Flex was already a DJ that was guesting on BLS and Kiss. He was DJing in a lot of uptown clubs.
For Chuck Chill Out.
Yeah, and Flex pulled me aside. He said, "Yo, Stretch, you got to talk more because people are calling this the Bobbito show." And he was concerned that the DJ, he knew how much work I was putting into a show to prepare it week to week, and he was concerned that the DJs weren't getting their proper. So the following week, I think I talked probably more in that one night than I had the previous 4 months, and subsequently became quite a blabbermouth on the radio.
Well, that's what made the show special.
Thank God, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the preparation that went into it, actually. As you said,
Well, unlike today when everything's sort of at your fingertips, that was back when, it was a vinyl. It was either, you're playing music either off a vinyl, cassette. Initially, actually, the WKCR station still had those old school, I don't even, what do you call them? Break-be-loo, carts, yeah, and there were these sort of 8-track looking tapes which you would record music onto, and you just pop them in, and they had a really kind of quick reacting play, so you can really hit it exactly when you want it to cue in. And we were playing. I mean, I still have those. I have drops from Run DMC, Dougie Doug, got like Flavor Unit, Assassination Squad on the cart, just for sentimental purposes. Don't have a cart machine, but what that meant was you were recording music onto carts. I was going to record labels every day to get promos. I mean, you'd make a trip to a label just to get one song. I mean, imagine that. Now you download 100 songs in a day. So it was a lot of legwork that went into preparing that. And then of course, arranging which guests were going to come up. Fortunately, because Bob was at Def Jam, you had a little network of through other radio stations, other managers and whatnot. So we hit the ground running. I mean, the first show we had Lati and Def Jeff. And those are names that might not ring bells to most of you, but to us that was a big deal because Lati had 2 records out on Wild Pitch, produced by 45 King, crazy records that Red Alert used to burn. Def Jeff was on Delicious Vinyl. The second show we had 2 Kings in a Cypher, which was D. Dot and Amin Ra, 2 of the biggest producers under Bad Boys Hitmen, and Serge from Third Base, who we were already close with, and that show was bananas. Second show, we were like, what is going on here? This is like the total wet dream of the hip hop fans. We were fans, sort of put on Front Street, and we were gassed doing it.
So Bob, talk a bit about how the certain innocence that went into not only doing the show, but the interactions with the artists. As you were saying, like you couldn't believe that you met these guys, but probably at that time, you realized that these were like regular, they probably really appreciated the opportunity that you guys gave them. Like what was that initial contact like?
Well, I mean, I think for me, I didn't have that sensibility because I was already working at Def Jam and was, consulting.
He was hanging with Russell Simmons.
Hello, Blue Jay. Wait, what was your question?
I was just talking about how, okay, so you were seasoned. You had already worked with all this talent. At the same time, this was a great opportunity for them, and they didn't have these kinds of they didn't have so many outlets.
Oh, okay.
So what was that like, sort of the initial rapport with, before the show really blew up, and you were starting to get artists?
Yeah, I think initially, like in terms of booking artists, it was a little bit difficult to appeal to someone to come up to a radio show that was from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m.
All the way uptown.
Yeah, all the way uptown. I mean, there were other shows that were late night, Special K and Teddy Ted, Dirty Dozen. Those were all like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. time slots on 105.9. But we were like, we were the new cats on the block. So, but luckily, I knew a lot of people from Def Jam and through Pete and Serge, Dante Ross, Sam Seva, club circuit. There were people on a continual basis like performing. So was able to really like encourage people to come up, but that only lasted for about 3-4 weeks. Like literally the bar was was set so high off of the first 4 weeks, literally by the second month, it was like, it turned. And then artists were hitting us up and like, yo, we want to come to your show. And then also I think it was just, it was such a quick spread as well. Like, you know, and Stretch mentioned the other day, like our first listening audience that engaged with the show and on an emotional level was the incarcerated population of the tri-state area, and the cab drivers and the security guards. And so they were the people who were advocates and evangelized the show to, you know, be on and write letters. And so I think I quickly realized that, like, you know, someone wants to connect to what he said was that, you know, he didn't feel like he had the right to be on the mic talking. I didn't feel I had the right either. Like, you know, I think I look back at that and I'm still kind of puzzled how, you know, we both become these sort of like, you know, figures for the 90s, because it's still kind of odd to me that this many people, you know, revere my opinion. You know, that was always odd to me. And so I had like a real like humility about it. And even like the first mic break that we ever took, I was shook. I was like, holy cow, like we have, you know, 10 to 12 million potential listeners, and they're about to hear my voice for the first time. Like no one knows who I am. I'm not a public figure. I started at Def Jam as a messenger, you know, and I literally, I put the mic up. I put the
Reenacted.
mic.
It was hilarious.
I took the level up, and I was like, "What's up, New York?" And then I was like, oh, "They heard me." Just quick, and like that's literally the first mic break. It was just, "What's up, New York?" And then I was like, "Oh wow!" Like, I was just so nervous. But
well, I think people trusted your opinions because the curation process. Like, obviously, there's a lot of rappers, and you could have had anyone up there. And I feel like you were a bit selective in terms of who you had up there, and I think that helped inform the trust that people had. I mean, talk about like, you guys are, you know, not the same person, obviously. Aesthetically, how did you guys decide who would be on the show?
I think in terms of the production of the show, we really just were selfish in a lot of ways, in that we just wanted to hear the people who we wanted to hear the next day on cassette. So we didn't really care about what the listeners wanted. So well, maybe not for you. I mean, saying for me, like, I just wanted to hear like the nicest MCs that I knew or who I didn't know. And you know, there was never a strategy or there was no calculations. It was just like, yo, he's nice or she's nice, whether they were signed or unsigned, or whether they were from London. You know, London Posse came up to our show like early on. I mean, you know, Stretch was playing Ghetto Boys out of Houston 6 months before the record blew up. You know, there was never only New York, and it was never that. It was just like, yo, whoever's nice can be up on the show and rock out. So
also, what's interesting is when we met. I mean, one of the reasons we became close so quickly was because of our shared taste. I mean, we pretty much in '90, it was very simple what was good and what wasn't for us. I mean, obviously that got more complicated as the years went on, but I would say from '90 to '94, '95, there was no question. We knew we were on the same page.
So, talk about some of the gems. Like, you know, it didn't matter if they had a record deal or not. Start talking about early on some of these artists that we have all gone on to, you know, on a emotional level. Talk about some of the artists before they blew up.
I think when you talk about revering an artist who didn't even have his own record out, I would say the best example of that is Nas. Nas had a verse on Live at the Barbecue, and somehow, I don't remember, I mean, I knew Akinyele already. That was kind of my connection to Nas. But Nas came up, and, you know, off of just that verse, you know, we were like, yo, Nas is coming. Like, this is crazy. I mean, and he was 16, thirsty to get any record deal. He would have signed with anybody. Didn't know it at the time, and you know, we couldn't have you know, been more impressed by this kid. I mean, he had that aura about him, and we were, again, gassed to be affiliated with him in any way. The fact that he was coming to our show alone, you know, from taking the train from Queensbridge. What are your impressions?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, you know, Large Professor was partial to that because Percy Pierre brought up Large.
Right.
Large Professor wrote his verse for Live at the Barbecue up on our station in December of 1990. DMX the Great, who later became DMX, who came up to our show in 1990 as well. And then you have and then for the next like 5 to 6 years, you just have a slew of artists coming through that, you know, basically threw the face off of the, you know, rap industry, including Big Dog the Punisher, who later became Big Pun, Political Prophets, who later became Mobb Deep, Biggie, who later became Biggie, Jay-Z when he had a 12-inch deal, no album deal, Nas when he was MC Nas, rapper Nas, Nasty Nas, OC, we resurrected some careers, Craig G,
Ultra.
Kool Keith, Ultra. Wu-Tang was another group that came up unsigned and wound up become the super group of the 90s.
Well, is there a particular moment that you remember when an artist came in for the first time and you knew, like, right there and then, like, you could see the future, like, whether it's Biggie or Nas? Like,
I don't think so.
When with the Big L Jay-Z freestyle resurfaced 2 years ago, and everyone acted like this was, you know, some lost discovered gem. Of course, everyone that listened to our show already had that. You were asked by somebody.
You was asleep. You'll wake up. You was listening to
No, son, sleep is the cousin of death.
You should have put a hot dog bun on his. I'm sorry. Oh, we're in a museum. Dang. Okay, we'll keep it. Let's get back to the intellectual.
Someone had asked you about the night that Big L.
Oh, Big L, Jay-Z.
Yeah, and someone asked you about that night, your impressions, and I remember you saying, honestly, I don't remember that night being really much different than any other night.
Definitely not.
That was.
That's not to take away from it. It's just that there were.
This happened every week.
There were a multitude of phenomenal evenings that, you know, could very well be as revered as that. I think it's just that Big L passed away. Jay-Z wanted to become Jay-Z, and the rest is history.
What's the craziest thing that's ever happened while you guys were taping that you can share with an audience?
You got that one. I mean, most of my time up there was spent looking at 2 turntables.
So you have an alibi.
So we have very different experiences because you were doing everything from answering the phones, answering the door, making sure everyone was behaving, and
make sure you behave.
Well, what was your nickname? What was it? The principal. I gave you that nickname.
Nah, there was a lot of. Well, I guess the wildest thing would be the night that the unnamed artist, we'll leave him anonymous, he tossed your record crate, and his flight case was easily 50 pounds, and he literally tossed it like 15, 20 yards across the Columbia lawn. How he did that, I have no idea. He was just upset.
What was he mad about?
Well, you know, like stretch. I had to deal a lot with the upset people. So a lot of people, they just wanted to be on the radio. You know, at a certain point, our show was the show to get showcased on. So, you know, people would just get irate about, you know, us playing their record. Or we were just talking to a woman from NPR, you know, Wu-Tang, when, this is a good story, good background story. So RZA, who's the producer behind, and I apologize, I guess we're assuming that everyone in this room knows who we're talking about. Wu-Tang.
Who doesn't know who RZA is? Really, raise your hand.
So RZA came up in '91 when he was Prince Rakeem, signed to Tommy Boy, and he brought up an artist named Ason Unique, who later became known to the world as Old Dirty Bastard. And Ason killed it, and so in December of '92, Stretch was out of town, and I didn't have an FCC license, so I wasn't legally allowed to be on the radio on my own. And so I was quite nervous, and 5 young men came into the studio. How they got in, I have no idea. And they tried to really strong arm me, like, yo, my man, play this record, yo. And I looked around and I was like, okay, well, I got a record playing right now, so I can give it to me, but yo, play that right now. And it was just like really not kind or courteous.
Not well behaved.
But I couldn't be the principal with them because I was just like, if you could kindly leave right now because I can't have any guests. And then, so, yeah, they left and I played the record, and it started out with this martial arts thing. And then the record came on, and it was like 9 MCs and no chorus, and it sounded like it was recorded in the basement, and it didn't, and it was a white label, it didn't say the name on it. So Eli Morgan Gessler from New York called later on, it was like, yo, what was that song that you played at whatever? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. The one with the Kung Fu karate joint. And I was like, I don't know. I just didn't know. I don't know. So anyway, I gave the record a Stretch the following week, because my role at that point in the station was just strictly to host, produce, book, you know, promote. Speaking of which, I used to be on a train with flyers, and I used to go from 11 cars, going through in between, passing out flyers to people heading uptown. Like, that's how Thirst Bowl.
Yeah, like Eli made those.
Yeah.
Those flyers.
Yep, that's how Thirst Bowl we were to promote the show early on.
You should have had M&M's with you.
Why?
With those sales.
Ah, I didn't even think about that. Maybe they fit my style.
Starburst.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then Stretch played the record. You know, Wu-Tang became a very popular group.
You want to talk about the second time they came through?
Nah.
No.
Because
that's for part 2.
That was beef. Yeah, they disrespected somebody up at the station, and then Method Man apologized publicly on radio, so that was cool.
Bringing people together. That's
Yeah.
nice. So it sounds like we're actually landing on what our friend here embarked on against 1993. And I was speaking to Mr. Stretch before we got into this, and he said that he was having a conversation with Mr. Bobbito about how 93 was probably the best year within your run in terms of the stuff that you were doing.
Did anyone catch WKCR last night? Yeah. 6 people? Nice.
That's why he's asleep. Right? A lot of people who used to be down with the show know that, like, you stay up, be all messed up the next day, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you know, Stretch, when we were talking about the show last night, and he was like, yo, Bob, there's not a lot of like super indie 12 inches that I'm hearing from our old tapes. And I think the reason why is that 93 was actually a great meritocracy in rap, similar to like 1988, whereby, you know, I hear people say, oh, the golden era, and like, they talk about like 2002, I'm like, wait a second, like, you gotta kind of have lived a little bit to determine a golden era for hip hop. There's no disrespect to anybody who's younger than me. But anyway, so in '88, it was a great year because if you were nice, you really sold the most amount of records. And it's a frozen piece of time and really almost in music history, right? Because even James Brown at his height wasn't selling a lot of records. So '88 was great, and then I think like in '93 it was kind of cool because the super indie, like, you know, the statement on Company Flow's record where it's like indie is fuck, you know, that hadn't started yet, because basically if you were really talented, more than likely there were enough intelligent A&R people out there to sign you. And so in '93 a lot of the greatest, you know, Redman was nasty, Redman got signed. Soulja Mission was nasty, Soulja Mission got signed, you know. So it was a good time for hip hop, I think. And I think in my estimation, Nas is unequivocally the most anticipated album of that decade, bar none. I don't even think you can argue that. You might think that other albums were better, but in terms of anticipation, and in my estimation, just the nicest, the best album is Illmatic. Now he records that in '93, and then he showcases it on our show in '93. So those are a lot of golden moments, I think. Right?
You remember Stretch?
Oh, now you want to take pictures of us? What is that for? Do you work for the museum? You do? Oh, cool.
Illuminati. They taking pictures, son.
So how those pictures turn out?
So, 93.
Yeah.
And that's all I have prepared to talk about '93.
What's up?
No, you were saying earlier, just
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit
Yeah,
more
I think
on-
what you know, I was in preparing the show for last night. It wasn't live. I spent a good 10 hours editing highlights together. What I realized was in '93 we had sort of garnered a certain amount of, well, rather a large following. We received plenty of accolades from various magazines, trade magazines, and like the Village Voice and whatnot. And but it was still, in the grand scheme, it was still pretty early in our radio career. So we still had we weren't jaded, and I can't do this.
The Fugees premiered on our show in '93.
What's so funny? You thought Praz was the nicest one, right? You messed up, son. I'm Haitian and I can even admit that. He's not the nicest. You couldn't see that as Boricua? You couldn't see that in the back? What's so funny about the Fugees, though?
No, because there's a lot of, please understand that, and if you listen to our show, we always had a lot of inside jokes, and it was, yeah, right?
Yeah.
So Stretch and I have an inside joke about the night that entire, because it was all Columbia artists. Wasn't that the same night that Nas and Big L came up too?
Oh, no.
I think Taisha brought all her Columbia
Makes
artists
sense.
up to
Yeah.
'93.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that was just a side note.
So what was it like being in the same Big L and Nas in the same room? What was that? What was their because Nas had this real like saying things that black people typically wouldn't say on rhyme, and Big L clearly saying things that weren't really being said before. Like, was there some kind of, yo son, I was the first one to say I was gonna snuff Jesus, yo. Like, I've always wondered about that. Because Big L Nas is gonna snuff Jesus, right? He's going to hell, and then Big L's the devil's son. You know what I'm saying? So I guess Nas is gonna see Big L in hell because he's like. I guess it was nothing. They just said hi. Like, I'm Lamont.
I mean,
Hi, I'm Nasir. Hi.
understand that Big L was actually like a really quiet kid. He didn't really say much, and when he would come to a show, he
Same with Nas, though.
Yeah,
Nas,
same
too.
with Nas. Like they both revered us. They were regular listeners, and I think they just appreciated being up and coming artists and being on the show. So yeah, I don't even remember them talking to each other.
I don't remember much about the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at records.
So were you guys just so caught up in what was going on that it just whizzed by? Like Lamont and Nasir came by and they rapped and they went home? Or?
I mean, it was just, you never knew that, there was no way to know that these artists were going to become, these super famous or super big sellers or super critically acclaimed. I mean, because there was just as many Nas and Big L's and Jay-Z's. I mean, there was Raggedy Man and Cage and all these other artists that, to me, I mean, their vocal performances on our show were on par with any of the other artists you might know of, but they never, they never got to surface. So to me, it was like you just never knew. And I think that's what drew people to our show, because they just never knew what was going to happen to these artists.
Look at the Fugees. Who would have known?
It's true. I mean, the Score was one of the biggest selling albums of the 90s, and me and Stretch are the first people thanked on the lineup.
The first people, and that's because no one would put them on the radio. No one liked them.
Seriously. So did you do it for Taish as a lookout, or you did it because...
No, the Salam Remy remix happened, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say anything. Yes, yeah, they did have a hit. Salam kind of created their career with the Nappy Heads remix. But it was a little bit of that. Taish, we were really cool with Taish. Once in a while, artists came up that we were probably on the fence about. I mean, it's interesting too how artists, the impressions that they made, how it affected how we felt about them moving forward. I mean, when Fat Joe came through, like, by no means did we think he was a nice MC, but after meeting Joe, we constantly played him because we kind of got who he was by meeting him, and his records actually sounded better after meeting him. It was kind of funny like that.
And it was cool because
you better like my record.
No, but it was cool because, like, the same thing with, I think, and parallel to G-Rap, like, I mean, Fat Joe and G-Rap, if you listen to their records, like, they're not people that you necessarily want to meet. And they would come to our show, and, we would snap on them and, make fun of what they were wearing, and they would snap on us, and all of a sudden, like, we're laughing with G-Rap. Like,
that was crazy.
It's like kind of bizarre.
I remember when that was happening, G-Rap, I mean, it was C or U, and everyone's snapping on each other, and I'm being really quiet, and I'm thinking, I got something for G-Rap. Should I go there? Now's the opportunity. I got something to say. Should I do it? I'm going to do it. And I did it. And he started laughing. I was like, whew. I'm still alive.
Yeah, I asked
Thought I was going to be in a carpet.
I remember asking Fat Joe, because he mentioned that he had a cat, and I asked him if his cat was fat. And Joe laughed, and I was like, huh.
Funny, remember when I did Arsenio? We were in LA?
Oh yeah, of course.
I did.
Joe, you brought Joe.
I did Arsenio Hall. I was a guest DJ on the show.
Wait, for people who are younger, Arsenio Hall was right. We gotta make it dummy proof. So Arsenio Hall was a huge TV show in the '90s, and he was very cool with a lot of famous people.
So a publicist from Elektra, Shelby Mead, I guess was asked, name some DJs that we could put on the show, and she recommended me. Next thing I know, we're in LA, limousine, the whole.
I was so proud of you.
Green room. Eli made a big banner that said Stretch Armstrong, which is in front of the turntables.
National TV, yo, man.
And
college radio DJ.
And Fat Joe, who was on Relativity Records, who we knew through the scene, was in town. So I said, Joe, come by. And then backstage, I saw Arsenio. I said, Arsenio, there's an artist in the audience named Fat Joe, who's really great. Unprepared, unbeknownst to Joe, Arsenio stops the show and said, we got an artist from New York in the house, Fat Joe, why don't you come up here? Joe came up, the band played a beat, I was cutting, and Joe was rapping, and the grin on this, I mean, Fat Joe's a gangster, he usually has a very serious grill. And his smile was like from over here to over here. I mean, I think he was drooling, doing FloJo, and that night.
Did he bring his cat on stage?
But that night, we ended up back at his hotel. He was hammered. He was drunk, and I'm trying to go to bed, and I'm leaving. He's like, nah, Stretch, you can't leave. Don't leave. Don't. Joe, I gotta go. Yo, next thing I know, I'm walking down the hall. Joe is on the floor, grabbing my legs, and I'm like this. Fat Joe. This is like the gangster. It was crazy.
And it all happened in 1993. You can't top that. You can't top that story.
That was bizarre.
I didn't know the hotel part.
Oh yeah, that was. Yeah.
I was so proud of you, man.
Remember when Joe broke a chair at Il Bobbito?
Nah.
No?
Nah.
You weren't? Oh, yeah. That did not happen in '93.
I remember.
That was later when we got a little bit bigger.
I gotta do so. I was in Miami in 1993 with Joe, and we were hanging out in his hotel room. And
Was he grabbing your
ordered,
legs?
No, he ordered out, and he ordered two seafood paellas. Do you know how big a seafood paella is? He ordered two. So I'm thinking like, word, I love seafood paella. Like we're all gonna eat. It was for Fat Joe.
Did he pull out his personal spoon? Said, sure, I got this. Oh, you want food? Here's the menu.
The leftovers were for the cat. So back to your questions. You've allowed us to go off topic.
Freestyle, baby.
Reel us back in.
It's all good.
Moderate.
So, bringing it back to 93.
93,
overall,
yeah.
like,
Can we talk about broader topics beyond hip hop in 93? Did you prepare?
well, if you let me do my job.
Ah, okay. Look,
I was going to go to the social climate.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you remember about the social climate in New York?
Dinkins was the mayor, right?
Black man with green eyes.
Yeah.
Or blue eyes. No contacts. Gotta respect that. How did he get those? I know how he got them. Cruise ship. Anyway, what do you remember about that?
About 93 in a social span. I mean, just simple things like I still had a beeper from Def Jam.
How's romance with a beeper? Do you remember? Like, how did you, if you had multiple, like, how did you handle that? Did you have two beepers?
No, I only had one beeper. But I just remember, payphones, walking around with quarters and stuff. I mean, what else about 93? Stretching out with roommates in 93. We lived
in like a fancy loft or something.
We lived in a
Hardly fancy.
an apartment building above a brothel.
A brothel? A brothel. Welcome to the brothel.
What's it called?
A brothel.
A
A
brothel.
brothel.
Listen, this man went to Wesleyan, right?
Yeah.
He's educated.
Yeah. So we lived above the.
I don't know if this really speaks to what was going on in New York, but since you're such a Souls of Mischief fan, they were in New York when the Rodney King verdict came down, and
Well, that was 91.
really, was it? Really?
Oh, the verdict. Oh,
The verdict, yeah.
oh,
Come
okay.
on,
I'm sorry.
man.
I'm sorry. No.
One wrenches in my spokes. What? Go ahead. What's up?
Because the night of the incident, I think we were actually on the air. When the tapes came out, and Yo-Yo was in town. He was an artist from Los Angeles, and we actually, and Stretch wasn't normally a political dude, but you did play a couple of statement records that night.
Siempre.
Palente, Shrimplay, Palente. I'm sorry, but back to 93.
Yeah, and so Souls were in town. Have they been signed already at that point? Do you know? Because there was an 8-month bidding war between the label I was working at, Big Beat, Atlantic, and Jive. And the only reason why it went on for 8 months is because Rob Tulo, who I was working with at Big Beat, he and I had developed such a great friendship with the group, and we met them because Dante said when you go to Gavin out in San Francisco, the Gavin convention, you got to hook up with my boys. And when we got there, this is so tangential. When we got there, literally after 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes of being at the hotel, we were in some stairwell with the whole Hyro crew, Souls, Casual, I don't think Del was there, Snoopy, who became extra prolific, and they were, I hate this word so much, cypher. But they were, passing blunts, and everyone was rhyming. It was incredible. Fast forward to us trying to sign them. Whose dad was the attorney? Was it Tajay's dad? Opio's dad, yeah. So Jive wanted to sign them, and for 8 months, I literally had a knot in my stomach because we just wanted to sign this group so much, and we lost, and it was heartbreaking. But they were in New York to record, and they ended up at our loft. You remember that? What's up? Where you go? Yeah. And Yeah, and it was crazy. I remember Tajay went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife this big and decided that he was going to explore the rooftops of New York City, which he did. He crawled out onto our fire escape and like 2 hours later, like just described all the crazy things he saw. And this is when you know, Rodney King verdict just happened, and you know, the tension in New York was palpable. It was, you know, we were wondering whether something was gonna actually G off like in LA. It didn't, but that's my meaningless Souls of Mischief story.
Well, no. Well, bringing it back to that, do you remember the show after the whole uprising? You know, where rappers talking about it on the show. Like, do you remember the episode right when that happened?
I don't. Other than Yo-Yo, did she speak about it?
Can you give them a yo-yo-yo-yo?
No, I'm not ready. I'm to warm up.
Nah, I mean, no.
So, the magic.
What did it mean to you when the verdict came through in '93?
In '93, when the verdict went down, I was in LA the day after interviewing Cypress Hill for my newspaper Beatdown, and I was with a guy named Elliot Wilson, and we flew out to interview Cypress Hill for the cover of our magazine. It was a big deal, like Columbia. We were going to put him on the magazine cover anyway, but they flew us out, and it was like, oh, we're in Cali. And I was just there with Elliot, and we were supposed to interview Cypress Hill, and they were like, which one of you motherfuckers smoke weed? And we were both like, nah, none of us. And Be Real insisted. He said, one of you is gonna smoke weed with us. And I said, my man, it's not going down, it's not me. So Elliot, who's never done anything in his life, literally takes one hit and was out like my man right now. Yo, NyQuil. You know what I'm saying? That could be a rap name, NyQuil. So
And that was when it was called the Chronic, but in New York, no one was calling it the Chronic. They probably said, you want to smoke some Chronic? You're like, smoke Chronic?
Right. So we didn't smoke, we didn't do anything. So he fell asleep, and I'm like, oh, I got a freestyle conversation. And then I was like, yo, I don't understand stuff out here, racially, gangs, like, you know, how do you feel about what's gone down? And, you know, Be Real had some really strong opinions, and Sen Dog, who you don't hear much from, had some pretty informed opinions. And I was like, wow, I'm in LA when this really historical moment's going down. I'm with Cypress Hill. I'm with my friend. He's asleep because he took one hit of strong Cali weed. You know, so that's kind of, you know, my memory of being out there. And it's just, it was really sad, you know, obviously very sad, you know, as an African American or a person of color, or as a human, when you see, you know, all the stuff that went down, you know, even the innocent people who, you know, Reginald Denny, you know, the violence that came out of that was really sad. But I was with Cypress Hill, you know, that's what I remember about '93.
Interesting. Cypress Hill, obviously a West Coast group, broken through New York City, initially on our show.
With videos produced by New York directors like David Shady Perez.
That's right.
So there's a lot of magic on the show for many, many years, and it's still magical. People treasure the tapes, but all good things must come to an end. You know, when did you guys, you know, realize that, you know, it's time for us to take a siesta, as Bob might say, with the family?
I retired from radio in 2012. Stretch and I did a radio show together. My bad, 2002. I'm sorry.
We're doing secret radio shows that I don't know about.
Illuminati radio.
We started doing a radio show together in 1998. At that point, we were on KCR as well as Hot 97. And so I think, you know, for me, like, just having moved on, you just get that sensibility that it's just time in life to move on. And that's, I always follow my gut. And, you know, I appreciate people revering what Stretch and I did in the 90s, and particularly that Band of Year of 1993. But by no means, it's the only thing I've ever done in my life, and it's nice to reminisce and laugh about it. But it's in a comfortable place, and like I think when I walked away from doing the show, like I never looked back. I've never regretted. I've never desired to be back on radio doing a hip hop show again. I feel like we stamped it, we killed it, we did what we need to do, and I'm a happy camper right now, and I'm happy to be on stage at the New Museum talking about 1993.
You have any recollections of the end of the?
Well, I mean, I spoke earlier about how in 1990 when we became friends, we had virtually the same tastes, and as the 90s progressed, things got a lot more complicated, and I was spending a lot more time in clubs. The time in between shows we spent very differently. You were doing like New York, and I think our sensibilities in terms of what music that we wanted to champion started divulging to the point where it got almost bizarre. I mean, people knew when I was there, and there were many shows that I missed because I was traveling a lot. When I was there, you would hear a certain type of music, and when I wasn't there, you'd hear something completely different. And I think the fans liked it when we were both there, and because they wanted to hear both. It became kind of one of two extremes. I'll just leave it at that. I think our taste in music and how we envision the radio spilled over into our friendship a bit, and there was a little bit of tension, and we would both kind of use the radio as a platform to kind of annoy each other. So there was this sort of personal sort of hidden narrative going on, and as we eventually decided to split Thursdays. We'd alternate, and what I did became known as Thug Thursdays, which was kind of a joke, and we laughed about the amount of people that were killed on record. At the end of the night, we'd have a body count. 519 people were killed tonight. 78 of them were innocent.
And then for when I was on it, like Stretch had the syllable meter because it was like super lyrical, and so it's cool that you brought that up. A lot of people don't understand. Like, I liked what Stretch was playing when he wasn't there. I just want to present something and that's always been my goal, is to present to people what they're not going to hear otherwise. So it's not like I was cool with Trash, Capone, Orega, all those dudes were my boys too, and I liked their records, but I wasn't going to play their records when Stretch was on the road because I wanted to play some other indie records that he might not have played or liked. So that's what went down.
Nice.
In 1993.
Well, I don't know how much more time we have, but I'm sure that these gentlemen would be open to answering a question or two.
Absolutely. We have
if
time.
anyone is brave enough.
People have questions? Did we do okay? Sorry.
There's, I see one hand. I see.
Is everyone awake?
Check.
Where's that bearded man? Whoop.
You know me, Bob. It's Fish.
Oh, Fish, what's up?
How you doing?
You let your hair grow out.
Something like that.
It looks good.
Thank you.
So, some people can do that.
I was just wondering, Bob.
Oh, really? Just for men.
I was saying earlier that this really feels like 1993 because I don't have gray hair and I'm really tired. How did that happen?
Pass the mic to somebody else. No, just he's done.
My question is, I think a lot of people here would probably wonder, the tapes are around, they're great, but what about a box set? What about a real library on the internet? I've seen the website on the internet where you're sort of regathering the tapes, but what are the plans? A book, something? What are the...
I've spent probably too much time digitizing and amassing a massive archive. I'm trying to, put that aside a little bit because it's occupied too much of my time, but I'm kind of obsessed with it. And legally, it's really hard to get around this because obviously KCR somehow, has, the copyright issues. This was broadcast on KCR, so they've got to say in it, we don't own the rights to this music. We'd have to clear, the artist appearances. There are some platforms, however, emerging like Legit Mix, where they're looking at new models of sort of incremental licensing. So I would like to see something within the next year where, whether it's something you can buy or some sort of online archive, it's going to happen. It will be available where everything's going to be centrally located. So all of you people that weren't there back in the 90s can get a taste.
Yeah, I've thought from time to time. I just finished co-directing a film titled "Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball NYC." It's going to come out this May, and I've been trying to figure out what my next project really will be. Dana Alvarella's here and Todd. They published my book. Where'd You Get Those? New York City Sneaker Culture, 1987. It'll be re-released this fall, and after that, I have no plans to do anything. It's like, okay, you know, freelance. All right, so I've thought actually to maybe write like some sort of memoir, you know, or like autobiography or something like that, where I would devote a good amount, you know, or a chapter to like the history, the background of me and Stretch, you know, but that as part of like the other stuff, you know, that happened like the night, yeah, the night the movies came up. Yeah. Next question.
Real quick,
Hey,
this
how you
one's for
doing? What's your
Stretch.
name?
My name is Ryan. What's going on?
Nice haircut.
Thank you very much. I know how some terms can get played out, and I'm always looking for you know, the latest thing to say. Stretch, you said that the word cipher, you hate saying that. Is there an alternative something that we don't know about? That is, because I know that does get thrown out there, but what's something
A
that's
circle of
it's
men.
a stretch? Just circle. Oh, snap! Yeah, that's not. That's a different kind of spitting right there.
I like cypher. You know, there was a great time in hip hop where, you know, I would owe a lot of the things that I learned to lyrics. You know, so I never knew about cypher before. You know, actually, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. There's a lot of things I learned. Oh, I think Ethan has.
Oh, we're in the back
He's-
now.
he-
We'll make
yeah,
our way
okay.
back up.
But the gentleman in the back has a mic.
What's going on? My name is Verse Essential, and my question is, who was the worst artist you ever interviewed? Like when you was interviewing this person, you just said that, I hate this guy or this person, like, I really want this interview to be over.
But now, I think we controlled pretty much the interviews, that we had a great quality and standard for who was invited to the show. What we didn't have was quality on who those artists brought up with them. And so sometimes we would hit jackpot. Big L would come up and he brought up.
So you brought your man.
No, but I'm saying, but like his man was Murder Mace, who wanted to become a Mace, and Killer Cam, who wanted to become a Cameron, and Fat Joe came up and brought up Armageddon and Keith Nutt, and a guy named Big Dog the Punisher, who later became Big Pun. So those are good moments. You know, Prince Rakeem brings up Ason Unique. You know, he later, you know what I'm saying? Like, so those great moments, and there's a ton of those. But the bad ones, you know, they weren't really interviewed. You know, they would rhyme, and then, you know, I would find a way to regulate that and be the principal, and then we will move on.
I'll tell you, like, I'll be like
last verse. Like right about now, I'm about to be to you, like, the question is done. Let's move on. You don't get too close.
I don't know, I'm not saying anything.
It's not time for comments, my brother. Pass the mic. You're done, last verse. Ethan. No, we can talk more afterwards, but literally, other people have questions.
I don't say anything.
You're good, my brother. Thank you, man.
Wow.
The principal has returned. No, it's not fair if he gets to ask 2 questions. Okay.
How you doing, guys? My name's James. I'm Bobbito. I have a signed copy, I think, of Mass Appeal. You signed it for me, the cover.
Oh, word?
Yeah. I still got that.
That's not a question.
While Sasha was there?
No, I don't remember. I saw you somewhere and you signed it for me. But,
Mass
I
Appeal magazine or the record?
The magazine.
Ah,
I think it was
who-
Mass Appeal.
who's
I
on the
just
cover?
know Bobbito's on there with sneakers and basketball.
Oh, yeah, that was a while. Okay, anyway, so what's up?
But, you know, like, I guess I'm kind of bummed that y'all don't have so much memory of a lot of these moments, because to me, like Nas spelling dead backwards and stuff like that are really like things that stuck out in my head. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, you know.
We have a lot of memories. We've just been sharing them.
That's what I have. You know what I mean?
Does it seem like we don't remember anything?
Well, like it's a blur.
You
Like,
get that
We were
upset?
in the show together.
Who are you?
so when
You are vaguely familiar.
So when
You're all right.
Nas, so like when Nas spelled dead backwards at the end of his freestyle, did y'all notice that? Did y'all realize that?
Did we
Were y'all cracking up?
did we notice what?
That Nas,
When Nas spelled
D-A-D.
dead, when he spelled it backwards. Did y'all notice that at that time, or?
He said D-A, he said D.
Yo, we remember that. Absolutely.
No.
That was a K Solo moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, but I mean, understand, my brother, like, the show was on from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., and it was a long time ago. We're in 2013. Like, you know, people email us all the time, like, yo, what was that record you played at 2:33 on August 17th, 1990? I'm like, yo, man, like,
they email,
no way, like.
they email me snippets. Can you please ID this? No, nerd, I can't. I'm 43.
And that's the other thing, going back to the licensing issue, is that, you know, Stretch was playing white labels. If we had to clear music at some point, like, we don't remember what that record was. You know, I don't. Yeah. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you.
We have great memories. All you need to
I
do is
have-
just jog our memory. You know, you know, I'm new to the Twitter world, but in the last like 3 days, people have been like saying all these things that like I didn't even remember. You know, that like Pepperidge Farm remembers. Do you remember that?
That was
Pepperidge Farm.
But Fondle remembers.
No, but I used to say that on the radio.
That's right.
Because Pepperidge Farm.
But I do have like lesser known rappers'
Classic.
rhymes memorized in my head from your show.
Oh yeah, that.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
You have a special
embedded.
lines.
Like 6ix9ine.
I have rhymes memorized as well.
Did you like when 6ix9ine rapped? Nas brought 6ix9ine up. I thought that was a.
Hey, chill out. No, but I was.
Exactly, but his debut 12-inch has still not come out yet. 6ix9ine is looking for a deal. Oh, how about Ron? Oh, this is interesting. Ron B.
Stitch by Stitch.
Stitch by Stitch. You know that record?
Why did you look at Kate?
Because
She has it.
I think every day I'm like, Ron B. Stitch by Stitch. That's going for $500. He hit me up recently and said he had a demo. I mean, this is like last year, or 2 years ago on MySpace. I think it was the last time I checked MySpace. Ron B. hit me up with a demo. This guy I played one
cannot
song
leave.
in 1990.
You can't leave.
Crazy. That's Ron B's man.
No, that's Ron B.
He's going to call him right now.
No, yo,
20-year-old rap beef.
Cool Keith emailed me the other day. It was like, yo, Bob, he called me Bobbito. Yo, Bobbito, I want to come to the radio show. I'm like, Keith, we haven't been on the air in 10 years. 10 years. I haven't been on the air in 10 years.
Yeah. And he hit me up. Stretch, can I come on the radio?
But going back to freestyles, there was a moment I think that I really realized how powerful our show was, and there was many of them. But when you're on the radio, and for my people here who have done radio, you can identify. It's a really weird. You don't want me to hear my story? Dang. But it's weird because like you don't get that immediate reaction. And Mad Skills had came to the show one night with Q-Tip, and he did a rhyme, and like 6 months later, I was hosting the Rocksteady Crew Anniversary Outdoors at the park, and Mad Skills, I put him on stage, and he literally, you know how like Jay-Z performs now, it doesn't have to do one word because the whole crowd knows his entire verses. This is a guy that wasn't even signed, had no video, had no song, had just literally only freestyled on our show, and the crowd went verbatim the entire verse. I caught goosebumps. I was on stage like, yo, that's crazy. And that's when I realized, wow, our show is powerful, yo. Yeah? You were there. You probably one that was.
Would you like to come up here and kick a Mad Skills verse?
Somebody else had a question, right?
I got one.
So it seems like you guys are still wearing some of the brands that you wore back in '93. Can you talk to us a little bit about
I'm wearing the same underwear.
And it's camouflage.
What I'm really interested in is like what the fashion show was like when they came into your show, because it seems like more than music, fashion was really, it was a platform where people took pride in it, and like brands like North Face and Steep Tech and all the brands like Nautica and Tommy and how they really just, low heads were just, authentic to the T. So can you just talk a little bit about clothing and how that influenced your excitement too?
Well, I can't talk too much about clothing just because I don't really care about clothes all that much, but I mean back then.
You look nice.
But thank you. Well, this is Margiela. But what's interesting is our perspective with these artists that became, really, famous and sort of household names. We knew them when they had no money. These guys were broke. I mean, when Biggie came through, he was wearing I think he had a red hoodie and jeans and scruffed up Timbs. And when Wu-Tang came through, it was the same thing. I mean, these guys they basically had, corner wear. This is what you wear when you're on the corner, and that's probably the way you're getting any money you're getting, and hopefully this rap thing's gonna work out. DMX,
means of hustles too.
What's that?
I feel like they had other means of hustle too, like with the clothing too, right?
Oh yeah, well, for the lows, the boosters. Yeah.
I mean, I know fashion does play a role, and I know.
Okay, you're going too far. We gotta reel you in.
Is that an ascot?
I'm sorry. I was waiting for you.
He's a well-dressed man.
He is a well-dressed man.
Look at you.
Somebody posted a photo on Instagram, and it was me and Stretch with Sam Sever in like '91 or something. I guess Downtown Science had come up. And I looked at the photo, and besides my hairline, I look exactly the same. I have a loose-fitting T-shirt and some shorts and some basketball sneakers.
When you're doing radio, though, no one can see you.
Yeah.
Of course, what you forget is that people come to take pictures of you. And I swear, every photograph that's ever been published, whether it's the New York Times, the Source, whatever, I'm wearing laundry day clothes. I mean, I look it's ridiculous. Wrinkles. Yo, D, you used to always clown me. I would do my Sunday radio show on High 97 and then sometimes go to the tunnel to hang out with Flex and everybody at Mecca. And yeah, I didn't really care. I would show up there with cut-off jeans. I did not care, and I'm proud of not caring, but this guy would clown me constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of fashion that's related to the era, but I don't think our show was really people didn't really come up there like styling like that. I can't remember any sneakers that stood out on any MC that came up, really. And I'm a sneaker dude, so yeah. Another question?
Hi, my name's Rachel, and I was actually a freshman at Wesleyan in '93. So your show was a real important connection to back home.
That's my alma mater.
Yeah. And actually,
You pronounced that really well, by the way.
And I'm actually here today with some of the youth organizers that work on an annual youth conference called Muévete. And so,
What's it called?
Muévete.
Muévete.
Meaning-
I've been a part of that before.
There you go. And so just making the connection for some of these young people who are, for me, these are great stories and memories and, stuff like that. But for them, this is, talking about sort of history and for folks who were born in the 90s. So how do you make that connection between what you guys did then, what's going on now, any message for young folks based on what you guys have been through?
I think the one thing to realize, Sasha, you want to answer it? I think the one vital thing to realize is how we acted as mentors, essentially, to the worldwide community of music lovers. And the reason why is because music as a whole just wasn't as accessible as it is now. And so, in 2013, college radio I mean, if we had started our show this year, I don't think we would be as pivotal as we were to an entire generation, because it's just, you know, now that the music is downloaded immediately, and, you know, fans might very well have it before a DJ, but we acted as like funnels, you know, to filter the best available music for our listeners for 4 hours. So I think that's why people, you know, enjoyed our show. To younger people, I think the one thing I can impart probably is that, you know, I realized probably in the second, I think it was the second month that we were on, getting letters from, you know, incarcerated people, and getting letters from, you know, from people in New Jersey, and there was one that stood out, you know, and it was this Puerto Rican kid in I forget the name of the city of Jersey. I literally still have the letter, but he was like, "Yo, Bob, like, you know, you are my role model. I don't know anybody in my neighborhood that's college educated, you know, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, you know, tries their best to be themselves." And so what I realized was that our voice on the radio was powerful. And I, you know, and there's a couple of moments where I was realizing that we were powerful, but that's the moment of clarity when I was like, wow, okay, cool. So I think, you know, Stretch and I, we separated ourselves from a lot of the radio shows because we were just literally just ourselves. And the more people respected that and encouraged that, it just became more comfortable to just go up there and just.
And we were also roommates when the show started, and that.
No, we weren't.
Well, but early on, eventually, and that kind of rapport spilled over into the show. So we had a sort of that sensibility that I think people really liked. I mean, they loved the music, but they liked the talking just as much, if not more.
So I guess the message is to be yourself and try to be positive. Ethan is controlling the mic, so I apologize if my friends are looking at me with their hands raised, but I'm not controlling who asks the questions. So if you have a question, get the attention of handsome Ethan.
Question, my name is Chris. Basically, you know, I've heard a lot of shows, I have a lot of shows, but obviously I haven't heard all of them. Do you recall off the top of your head if there's ever been a moment where someone's called to freestyle and you hung up on them or clowned them, and then later they gotta come up, or they become famous and you just hung up on them at the moment?
Well, you got to remember, people liked to get hung up on. I mean,
I always get confused between sadistic and masochistic. Which is the one where people like to be punished?
Masochistic.
Masochistic, yeah. There's a lot of masochists who listen to our show.
But I mean, a lot of the artists that I mean, like guys like Jojo Pellegrino, he used to call up. Artifacts, we knew them from calling up. They rhymed over the phone. That's how. When Biggie came up, there was another group. No. Biggie came up. He had a demo, and then we did a demo battle, and it was Biggie against the Bronx Zoo.
Bronx Zoo, yeah.
And you know, we decided to have the very scientific. Tally, you know, just by having the phones ring and answering, you know, whoever, you know, the first 20 calls, you know, whoever won out of those, whoever got the most of the 20 votes won, and the Bronx Zoo won the demo battle. And
they're actually doing a remix with Ron B on MySpace.
And Biggie left. I know that this isn't the, you know, this is not about the telephone, but Biggie left very, very salty. And if you look at the thank yous on Ready to Die, everyone in our clique of friends is thanked except for us. I know from, I forget his name, the guy who was doing promo for Arista, and you know, Bad Boy was through Arista. He was talking about, soon after that, they went on an East Coast run on a tour bus, and Biggie was saying that he almost wanted to quit rapping after losing that battle. I mean, he was really, really bent over that. And that was really Bob's idea to do the demo battle.
Yeah.
Whose demo was better? Do you remember?
You know, honestly, it's tough to say, but honestly, I think Bronx Zoo did have a decent demo. Biggie's demo, you know, he developed as I mean, he was obviously like a gifted MC, but I'm saying in terms of the actual song, his demo wasn't a great song by any measure. I don't remember.
All right.
Yeah.
Pepperidge Farm.
I probably hung up on a lot of people that I don't know. Yeah, Pudgy the fat bastard. Did I hung up on? Did I hang up on you? I hung up on Ricky Powell. I didn't even realize that. Stretch told me the other day. That's my man. And I
Yeah.
didn't
Wow.
remember.
You heated him.
Again, I don't
Lovely.
remember a lot of stuff that happened back then. Not because I was high or nothing. It's just 4 a.m. You can't hold me responsible.
If you wanna catch that that hang up, you could download the show from last night. It's in fact what's your SoundCloud if you want to download it? DJ Nasty Vaz with a Z on the end. That's the SoundCloud. You could download last night's show, and that particular call is on there, and it's very funny and embarrassing.
Okay, I'm just gonna let
Sit
everybody.
straight,
We're gonna
sit
do
straight.
2 more, so pressure
Don't
is
lean.
on to
Sit
do a
straight.
good question. All right.
Because if you lean, then you're gonna feel comfortable. I'm so happy you sat in front, man. For real, it was a great moment.
You want me to stand up or?
Yeah, stand up, sure.
All right, so I'm.
Is that polo?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's your man right there.
You guys should meet afterwards in the green room. And talk
Well, what
polo.
happened with the guy that left? He never came back. What do you think?
He's waiting out there with Ron B's cousin from Harlem.
We didn't talk about 93 enough, and he was disappointed. That's what happened. He's a subscriber to New Museum. Oh, we had a
No,
question.
it's okay. Take your time.
What's up?
No, the question I had was, what's your perspective on music today? You know, radio personalities. Like, you got Peter Rosenberg, who does the show on Hot 97. You know, he kind of has like the late time slot, and you know, he brings in a whole bunch of new artists like Joey Badass, Action Bronson. Like, he basically plays what he wants to listen to. Like, what's your perspective on you know, basically radio personalities we hear like today?
Well, I will be completely honest in that I've never heard Peter Rosenberg or Cypress Sounds, or, I mean, I haven't listened to radio in many, many years. In fact, Susio, who's here, took over our radio show eventually, the time slot, and I didn't even listen to him, and that's like my little brother, you know. But I would stop once a year just to check up on him and get on the mic and say peace to the listeners. So I really can't say I have no perspective, but I do have respect for Peter and Cypher, because I was actually on their show 2 weeks ago. I was doing a Kickstarter campaign for the film that I co-directed, and you know, they were like, "Yo, come up and talk about the film." I'm thinking like they're gonna interview me for 3 minutes and they're gonna play music. They talked to me for 45 minutes on the Juan Epstein show. So that was mad love, you know, unbelievable for 45 minutes. And you know, they gave me and Stretch so much respect. You know, when I first met Peter, it was at a club, and he like stopped the music and literally was like, "Yo, like, we wouldn't have our time slot if it wasn't for Stretch and Bobbito, like, to the party." You know what I'm saying? Like, stop the party. So when things happen like that, like, I don't have to listen to him. I just, you know, consider, hey, he shows respect, and you know, people know what we did. Some people don't, and that's fine too. That's cool. Yeah. You have a spot, you have a ketchup on stain on you. Were you in the new museum? Were you in the archive room?
What's up, y'all? Quick question about the yo. Because that hasn't been brought up. I saw you were trying to, and Stretch had to warn up.
You should have listened to him. He leaned back and fell asleep.
I was about to take his camera, turn it around. We're like, oh, okay, yeah. Fell asleep twice.
If you could
for
give
real,
a little...
just sit in the back, though.
Get a Zoom lens. Just wake up every 5 minutes and take a picture.
Sit in the back. Are you getting paid? Are you getting paid by the new museum to be here right now?
You are airing this guy out, man.
I'm sorry. Is that bad?
Messing with his livelihood.
I was just having fun. I'm sorry, you were asking a question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to entertain the crowd. That's what we do. It's the spirit of the show.
Anyway.
The spirit of 1993.
When exactly did the yo officially start?
This is a museum-worthy question.
And, no, I mean, like, obviously...
Just email me later on MySpace. Come to the Ron B forum, and we'll, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's I do have the world title for fastest yo-yo-yos. Many people have tried to take the belt from me, and they've failed because they suck at it.
Can you give them an example?
I just did.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you did.
Yeah,
You did the rapid fire.
Did you catch that? It was.
Biggie before he passed away saw Stretch.
Oh yeah. That was That's when I knew that the show was powerful. Had a lot of power. I was on Houston. Remember when they had a gas station, a car wash on Houston? Had an office right over there. I was coming back from the deli.
Don't know.
And I'm walking across through the car wash, and I see Biggie and C's avoiding the rain by standing in a foyer, not a foyer. What do you call it? Whatever.
Awning?
There was no awning. It was just a doorway. It's a doorway.
Bravo.
It was a they brought Bell, and I see them, and Biggie sees me, and it always tripped me out when Superstar, he was already a superstar, you know, I don't know if I was just telling you this experience about having seen DMX. We met DMX in '90, he becomes a superstar, I bump into him at a club in like 2002, and he's, DMX multi-platinum, big stuff, and he sees me and gives me a hug, and it's just like, people are like, yo, who's the tall, skinny white guy? Why is DMX hugging him? What's going on? And it was like that. I see Biggie and C's across the street say, what's up? And Biggie goes, yo, 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 yo.
Sasha, you good?
Oh yeah, I'm hanging in there with you guys.
Have we departed from?
No, I think we touched on '93. We touched on random rhymes that no one would remember unless you were this guy. Talked about special moments with rappers who are no longer here. We talked about how you guys met. Talked a little bit about the climate in '93 socially. Why don't you guys talk a little bit on the way out about projects you have going on for the people who should know what you have going on?
Bob's got a movie called Doing It in the Park.
Yes, he has a...
I've seen the movie, and actually, I just got to say that it's incredible. I didn't want the lights to go on. I wanted to just keep going. There should be like a 5-hour edit of it. On Tuesday night, actually, I start filming my own movie. I'm starting a series of music documentaries on 90s albums that have not gotten the kind of the due respect through documentation that I think they deserve. And
where can we see this?
We're not sure yet. Like you working with Goldcrest, Nick Wested, as am I. Nick's got his fingers
Nick
in a lot
was
of.
our roommate in '92, '93 when we were doing a radio show.
So not sure yet. Literally the first day of shooting is Tuesday, and we're starting with Mobb Deep, the Infamous, which is a pretty pivotal album in my opinion.
All right, well, since it's hip hop and we're on our way out, I'm gonna give a shameless plug for my wife's new book. It's called Bird of Paradise: How I Became Latina, a memoir. It's about DNA, it's about feelings, it's about hip hop, it's about New York City. You can buy it. And buy everything that these guys have, and thank them for coming out.
Thank you.